everybody! Today we are going to be talking about something so prevalent in our society. We're going to be talking about depression. And to understand depression, we really need to understand a tiny bit of neurochemistry. And to understand that, I'm going to try and explain it to you. I am by no means a neuroscience or neuroscientist or a scientist whatsoever, but I know a little bit about neuroscience and neurochemistry, so I will teach you that. And hopefully, you'll be able to understand this a little more than me just posting a picture about this like I was going to do. But I changed my mind because I'm determined to get you to understand this rather than just observe. So, to understand neuroscience, let's start with the basics. So this is a human. He's pretty happy with himself. And what do humans have? Everybody has a brain that looks nothing like that, but you get the idea. And in every brain, we have billions of nerves just constantly firing off synapses. If I had a number that would explain to you how many synapses happen every second, it would blow your mind. Like, what? Can't believe it. Okay, so I am going to talk about what I'm going to talk about today is how these nerves communicate with each other, because that, and I'll also talk about how that relates to depression at all. So right now I am going to draw out, actually, you know what? Going back to this, how do these nerves communicate with each other? Well, one of the ways that nerves communicate with each other is through these things called neurotransmitters. What are neurotransmitters, you ask? Well, I'll explain that in a second. Neuro, from the Greek word neuron, means nerve. And then transmitter, you probably already know what this means, but it means to move. So neurotransmitters are pretty much chemical substances that transmit nerve impulses across a synapse. What's a synapse, you might ask? A synapse is this fancy place in between where nerves interact, I guess, is a good way of explaining it. This is the end of one nerve or a neuron, and this is the beginning of another. So, and then the synapse, where all the party and magic happens, is right here. Got a little birthday hat, a bunch of stars, because this is where the magic happens, in the synapse. Woohoo! I'm gonna draw some eyes on these guys. So, this nerve, the end of this nerve, is called the presynaptic nerve ending. And this is called the postsynaptic nerve ending. And what else can I put in here? We have so many neurotransmitters going off in our brains, but the three that I'm going to talk about today are serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. So, these three things, they're just floating around in pockets in the presynaptic nerve ending. They're floating around. They're also being shoveled out like crazy in these things. I'm going to call it a factory because that's pretty much what it is. But just constantly being made and absorbed into the presynaptic nerve ending. And to balance that, because everything in life needs balance, there's also these guys. I'm going to draw them as angry men because they destroy things. They are not bad guys by any means, but they just really don't like neurotransmitters, and so your body produces it as a way to balance the neurotransmitters in these nerves because you need the correct amount or you're going to have a chemical imbalance. So these guys pretty much come along and destroy any excess neurotransmitters floating around. Okay? So you might ask, what does this have to do with nerves communicating with each other at all? I will tell you. So how nerves communicate with each other is kind of simple. This nerve goes, oh my gosh, I want to talk to you. Let me talk to you. And this one's kind of like looking the other way, not minding its own business, not really paying attention. And this, it needs some transmitter sites or receptor sites. And this one's like, oh my gosh, let me talk to you. So it releases a ton of these, or a normal amount of the serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine into the synapse area. And hopefully, this guy will be like, oh my goodness, are those neurotransmitters? And then it'll absorb the neurotransmitters, and then the pretty much reaction will continue to other nerves through the end of this one. So that's pretty much how cells neurons communicate with each other in a very, very cartoony and very simplified way. But I should say, if these neurotransmitters aren't absorbed by this guy, or not all of them are absorbed by that guy, they go back into the presynaptic nerve ending and they just stay there and hang out until the next time they're needed to contact this guy. Okay? So what happens in people with depression, and this, I should say, this whole theory for depression is called the monoamine theory of depression. It is a super cool thing that is being looked at like crazy for being the cause of depression. It has also been said to be like the most likely cause of depression. I haven't explained it in full, but I just wanted to put that there. So what happens, what this is really, is that people with depression are known or have been studied to have higher levels of these guys, and these guys are actually called monoamine oxidase. It's an enzyme that breaks down neurotransmitters. I should have said that before. So people with depression have higher levels of these guys that break down the neurotransmitters. So when you have high levels of these guys, then you have lower levels of these neurotransmitters. And then you can't transmit the amount of neurotransmitters through your neurons as much as you want to. And when you have lower levels of these neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, I know a lot of you have heard of the effects of serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. They make you feel good, and without them, you don't feel so great. And that has been shown to be one of the causes of depression. Again, the monoamine theory of depression. There are a lot of other theories of what causes depression. Like there's a couple to do with your DNA, so it's genetic. There's also some other ones, but really this is the one that I'm focusing on today, and I hope you understood that. So please stay tuned for the rest of this post, because I am going to give you some alternatives, and hopefully you'll end up feeling as jolly as this guy, because he's pretty jolly guy. Thank you.